Greetings. Welcome to a presentation about The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. This presentation was made by Andrés Figuera, Catherine Mota, and Sofía Colmenares. Before delving into the play, it's important to understand the political and historical context of the time. The Merchant of Venice was written by William Shakespeare around 1596 and 1598, during the Elizabethan era in England. It was during this time that Venice was synonymous with a wealthy, multicultural trading hub, which was ideal for themes of commerce, money, law, and religious tension, which is why Shakespeare chose this location for his play. It was also around this time that anti-Semitism was common practice in Europe. Jews had been expelled from England in 1290, so Shakespeare used this sentiment to condensate several sinful characteristics to one of his characters, Shylock, which represents a familiar stereotype for the audiences of the time. Shakespeare tried to challenge some of these ideas by giving Shylock a level of complexity, although he still faces the prejudices of his time. The play explores themes of mercy versus justice, business as a synonym for love or emotional connection, and Christianity versus Judaism, reflecting social hierarchies and the ideas of the Renaissance. And all of this information is vital to comprehend the play more thoroughly. According to Legat, if The Merchant of Venice has always seemed one of Shakespeare's more problematic and disturbing comedies, this may be because it examines the networks of society more closely than usual and treats outsiders, one in particular, with a severity that seems to go beyond the comic. Shakespeare examines a society where morality is thin and more different than today's standards. In a plot summary, Antonio, a merchant in Venice, agrees to help his friend Bassanio by borrowing him money to court the rich heiress Portia. Antonio has his fortune at sea, so he has to borrow money from Shylock, a Jewish moneylender, under a strange condition. If Antonio fails to repay, Shylock can take a pound of his flesh. Bassanio ends up winning Portia's by solving her father's riddles. But Antonio's ships are lost, and he cannot repay the money to Shylock, which he demands his bond. In court, Portia disguises herself as a male lawyer and outwits Shylock. He can take the flesh, but not spill blood. Shylock, of course, loses the case and is forced to convert to Christianity, losing much of his wealth. Now, let's discuss some of the main characters in this play. Antonio, he is a melancholic merchant, deeply devoted to Bassanio. He expresses his devotion in the line, my purse, my person, my extremest means lie all unlocked to your vocation, which means that anything Bassanio asks, Antonio will give it to him. During the first act, he starts as a selfless friend, but by the fifth act, he becomes a symbol of Christian mercy in the eyes of the Christian audiences. Bassanio, on the other hand, is a young nobleman. During the first act, he appears somewhat shallow by simply wanting Portia for her wealth. But during the play, he discovers the meaning of loyalty, love, and sacrifice. So, he matures by the fifth act. Portia is an intelligent and resourceful woman. She challenges gender norms by disguising herself as a male lawyer. She starts as a passive prize, but steadily becomes a powerful agent of Christian justice. Shylock is a Jewish moneylender that participates in usury. He can be seen as both villain and victim, depending on how people interpret the story. During the first act, he is portrayed as a vengeful and rigid man, but he is later shown to be just as human as the others. He's a man hurt by the loss of his daughter and the mistreatment of his people by the Christians. By the end of the play, he is stripped of power, religion, and identity. Now, let's explore some of the secondary characters in this play. Graciano, Nerissa, and Jessica. Graciano is Bassanio's loud friend, and Nerissa is Portia's witty maid. They offer comic relief, but also show loyalty and cleverness throughout the play. They help to alleviate the play with their comic remarks. Jessica, Shylock's daughter, elopes with Lorenzo. Her evolution is controversial. She rejects her heritage by escaping her home. Lorenzo, Lancelot Gobbo, and the Duke of Venice each play supporting yet meaningful roles in The Merchant of Venice. Lorenzo is a close friend of Bassanio and Antonio, who elopes with Shylock's daughter Jessica, symbolizing romantic love, but also raising questions about cultural and religious loyalty. Lancelot Gobbo, the comedic servant, adds humor through wordplay and clumsy logic. His shift in loyalty from Shylock to Bassanio reflects underlying social and religious tensions in the play. And finally, the Duke of Venice serves as the legal authority presiding over Antonio's trial. While he sympathizes with Antonio, he upholds the law until Portia's clever legal argument saves the day. Together, these characters enrich the play's theme of love, justice, and identity. The Merchant of Venice challenges us to reflect on themes of mercy, prejudice, and money through characters who are far more complex than they first appear.
Human passions. When analyzing Shakespeare's works, it becomes clear that human passions refer to the powerful emotional forces that drive human behavior, often beyond the limit of logic or reason. These passions, such as love, hatred, greed, mercy, or vengeance, shape the motivation of his characters and ultimately lead to either their triumph or downfall. For Shakespeare, human passions are not merely emotions, they are forces capable of building or destroying societies, friendships, and personal identities. One clear example of this can be seen in The Merchant of Venice, where Shylock's intense desire for revenge against Antonio consumes him entirely. His need for justice, driven by years of humiliation and discriminations, transforms into a blind vengeance, showing how passion can distort human judgment. As literary critic Harold Bloom suggests, Shakespeare's characters are not only representations of humanity, but also studies how internal desires battle external realities. Shakespeare, The Invention of the Human, 1998. Ultimately, when Shakespeare explores human passions, he is reflecting on the complexity of human nature. His play suggests that while passion can inspire greatness, they can also lead to self-destruction if they are not balanced by reason or compassion. In this way, Shakespeare portrays human beings not as purely rational creatures, but as emotional beings constantly struggling between their noblest hope and their darkest impulse. One of the most powerful human passions represented in The Merchant of Venice is revenge. Shakespeare presents revenge as a destructive force capable of consuming individuals entirely when fueled by personal pain and societal injustice. Through the play Shylock, the Jewish moneylender embodies this passion. After years of suffering, humiliation, mockery, and discrimination for the Christian community, particularly from Antonio, Shylock's desires for revenge becomes his main motivations. His insistence on claiming a pound of flesh is not just a legal demand, but a symbol of how personal grievances can turn into obsessive hatred. This idea aligns with critic I.D. Nuttall's observation in Shakespeare the Thinker, where he explained that Shakespeare's characters are often trapped between reason and overwhelming emotional forces, showing how revenge can clothe judgment and humanity. In Shylock's case, his pursuit of revenge isolates him, leading to ultimately downfall and humiliation in court. In conclusion, The Merchant of Venice reveals that the passion for revenge, while rooted in real suffering, can lead to the destruction of both the victim and the aggressor. Shakespeare's passion, like revenge, often blind individuals to mercy, compassion, and the possibility of reconciliation, turning personal pain into a public tragedy.
Genre of your play and why. William Shakespeare, The Merchant of Venice, can be primarily classified as a comedy. One of the fundamental reasons for this categorization is that despite the tension and conflict that's developed throughout the plot, none of the main characters die. This dynamic characteristic of classic comedy culminates in an ending where, from the most of the characters, a king of order is restored and marriage are celebrated, a hallmark of the genre. Furthermore, the play makes extensive use of irony, a comic device that highlights the contradiction and fluff or character situation. This irony not only generates moments of humor but also highlights the hypocrisies and failed expectations of the characters, a common feature in comedy, intended to entertain and at the time to subtly criticize the love affair. This gives an exchange of characters like Portia and Nerissa also contribute to the lightness and why typical of a comedy. However, it's a crucial recognize that The Merchant of Venice is not a pure comedy and contains strong elements that bring it closer to drama. The play addresses that as serious themes that are found humorous. The most notable situation is Sherlock's trial, which generates a profound sense of injustice and tragedy. The public humiliation, forced conversion to Christianity, and dispossession for property are cruel events that do not evoke laughter. This part of the play reflects a harsh reality about intolerance, revenge, and the complexity of justice. The irony in this scene rather can be than merely humorous, becomes bitter and exposes social and religious prejudice, giving a dramatic and somber tone for this reason. Many consider it a problem comedy. This term was popularized by Shakespeare critic and scholar F. S. Boas in the early 20th century, specifically is 196 book Shakespeare and his predecessor Boas coined the term to group plays such as The Merchant of Venice, Measure for Measure, and Wills at that end were which neither pure comedy nor tragedy, which instead feature complex moral dilemmas, ambiguous ending, and not often tone. The happy endings do not come to for truth altars, leaving audience with unresolved questions about morality and fairness. Your final thoughts and recommendation. The main idea about The Merchant of Venice is that a play, despite the classification as a comedy, highlights why the tradition of morality plays. Throughout each a sublet, not sub-sublet action, and might be considered mundane, can be observed exploring the moral consequences of the character decisions. The portrayal of the relationship between Jews and Christians where the Jews are portrayed as the bad guys and receive punishment, reinforced for this idea that the play seeks to convey a moral lesson that the end and evil receive injustice deserve. Will this interpretation reflect the mentality of the time in which Shakespeare brought the play? Today it also invites thought critically reflects on prejudice and tolerance. And the final recommendation is that its play be viewed from a broad and objective perspective. It is essential that viewers take the time to interpret each of the characters without falling into the preconceived judgment. By doing so, it is possible to appreciate the complexity of the plot and the moral dilemma is present, allowing for deeper and more nuanced understanding for the message Shakespeare intended to convey and how these messages and resonate for be challenged in today's society.